Instead of pillars, the roof, if there was one, was held up by statues of giants, their arms strained to keep the sky in place. Rivers of liquid gold and silver spilled from indescribable heights, falling in cascades and splashing their way down sculptured walls. In the center of everything, a grand chair was placed on a dais at the top of yet another set of stairs. Upon it sat Drome. Dwarves, Belgliglungrians, Dromians, Durgs, whatever name you call them by, they are one of the most underrated races in Elan, with a rich history full of victories and defeats, greed and invention, giant cities filled with treasure and ghettos filled with squalor. So today, we cover the full history of the Dwarven race. This will include spoilers for the Legends of the First Empire series, Rhaenyra Revelation series, Rise and Fall series, and Drumendor. Let's get started. Tens of thousands of years ago, all the peoples of the world, who were still a single race at that time, lived in the ancient grove in the city of Erebus, led by the 5 siblings known as the Aesira. Turin was the eldest, Trylos was the second-born, then came the twins Drome and Farrell, and the youngest, Mari. Our story revolves around Drome. When the Aesira were young, Drome loved building, and so as Erebus grew, Drome naturally drew the many artisans of the city to himself. Drome would have multiple children, and though we do not know who his eldest child was, his second child was a male named Dromian. Dromian would go on to father the nation of followers which would bear his name. Around this time, Turin, now going by the name Rex Uberlin, declared himself king of Erebus and the world. The other 4 Aesira did not accept his reign and defied their older brother. Their defiance angered Turin, resulting in Turin killing Trylos. At that point, Farrell left with her followers and founded the city of Serdia Ferilia. Drome and the many artisans of Erebus would be next to leave, founding the city of Dorthanea to the north. Leaving Erebus and introducing the peoples to additional hardships would start to negatively affect the people. Whereas Drome's son, Dromian, had a lifespan of around 2,000 years, his offspring would only average lives of around 1,000 years going forward. Uberlin would launch a war against his siblings, first going to Serdia Ferilia and slaying Farrell, then marching on Dorthanea and killing Drome, and finally going to Marn and killing Mari. Though Drome was now dead, his line would survive and continue to multiply through Dromian. Dromian would father Dorn, who fathered Durin, who fathered Dineth, leading to Dareth, who fathered Droheim, and on to Drolim. By this time, Uberlin had disappeared, and his enemies had begun to turn the tides of war against Uberlin's followers, the Gazelle. Drome's ancestors, now going by the name Dromians, were under the leadership of Drolim. They joined forces with the Frey and humans and besieged Erebus. The siege lasted 20 years, but finally resulted in the city falling and being destroyed. During the siege, though, Drolim died, and his son Dorgith became leader of the Dromians. Over the next 300 years, the war continued, as the Gazelle were pushed back to Orencia and Arkham. Finally, the alliance of peoples besieged Orencia, the Dromians being led by Dorgith. 3 of the 5 remaining Riva, lieutenants of Uberlin, who were in Orencia, decided to attempt to destroy the world through magic. Their attempt fell short, but still destroyed the city and rent a large swath of the continent, sinking it underwater. Dorgith died, and so leadership and the survival of the Dromians would fall to his son, Dorith. Fleeing the continental cataclysm, Dorith would lead his people west, across the Araphis Sea, and finally to Mount Dome, establishing the city of Neath. There, Dorith and his 6 brothers, Bel, Brunden, Darren, Grick, Nye, and Lung, would each become the patriarch of their own clans. Dorith would be named Thane, which was the title of the Dromian who was enthroned in Neath and ruled over all 7 clans. Over the next several thousands of years, Thaneship would pass down through the direct descendants of Dorith. While the Dorith clan ruled during this period, the Nye and Darren clans would settle close to Neath and support the Dorith. The remaining 4 clans would continue south and settle the lands there. The Dromians continued with this form of leadership for many generations. It was also during the Age of Thanes and earlier that the Dromians would physically change, becoming much shorter and stockier. Due to their underground nature, their height decreased to around 3 feet, and their bodies became extremely strong. After some time, the Brundelen clan in the south began to rise in status, and when Lyndon became their clan patriarch, he partnered with perhaps the greatest Dromian inventor of the time, a Brundelen named Antvari Berlin. The pair, along with several thousand of their clansmen, began a massive project on the southwest tip of the continent at a volcano named Mount Druma. The construction project aimed to tame the volcano, create a giant forge, and a massive 2-towered fortress called Drumendor. It is also rumored that an unknown person may have been heavily involved in this project, whom we believe may have been the Aesir Turin, who was attempting to atone for the destruction he had caused as Uberlin. Due to the success of the ongoing project, Lyndon gained notoriety and fame among Dromians, and he declared himself king, thus ending the era of Thane rulership. Lyndon created the city of Lyndon's Lot as a more centralized capital for the Dromian people. Lyndon would pass before Drumendor was completed, and his son Math would become king. Math would also pass as construction continued, but Drumendor would finally be completed while Math's son, Midian, was king. It was also during King Midian's reign that deep beneath Neath, the Dromians let loose the Ancient One, Trylos. The Dromians had burrowed down so deep beneath the surface that they had begun hearing a voice calling out to them to set him free. Trylos, the second of the Aesir whom Turin had killed, was trapped in the underworld, in the abyss. Trylos offered to teach the Dromians how to make copper in exchange for freedom. The Dromians took the knowledge, but then said copper was too weak. Trylos next taught them to make bronze, which the Dromians accepted, but again returned and said it wasn't enough. Trylos then offered knowledge on how to create iron. The Dromians once again accepted, and once again returned, saying it wasn't enough. Trylos was getting frustrated by now, and promised that in exchange for his release, he would give the Dromians the seed to the first tree, which if they ate its fruit, would grant immortality. The Dromians finally agreed, but once they freed Trylos, he told them that the first tree actually resided in the sacred grove in Erevan, in the Frey capital of Estremnadon. Trylos, furious at the Dromians, created a giant demon-like sentinel, which the Dromians called Balgargarath, which terrorized and killed the citizens of Neath. The Dromians were forced to flee their once capital city. A retinue of 300 warriors were dispatched back into Neath. They led Balgargarath deep within Neath and placed knockers, devices powered by dripping water that make a sound the same as a hammer. By creating a series of sound devices, they were able to lead the demon sentinel in an eternal trek through the tunnels. All 300 warriors sacrificed their lives to keep Belgargarath lost in the labyrinth beneath Neath. King Midian, who was more concerned with the possibility of immortality, sent word to the leader of the fray, Fane Gika, demanding the fruit of the first tree. Fane Gika had to deny this request, as the first tree was located behind an impenetrable door, and so was impossible to access for even the fray. King Midian was angry, but his daughter Beatrice begged him not to attack the fray. Beatrice had the gift of foresight, the ability to see the past and the future, and not in a small way. Beatrice was one of the most powerful of seers to ever exist. Though she was still very young, she had already had 6 important visions, which had been drawn out as giant murals on the walls of Drumendor. Her third vision saw the Dromians going to war with the fray, which ended very badly for the Dromians. King Midian refused to listen to his daughter though, and not believing Fane Gika's excuse, he killed the leader of the fray, thus beginning the Great War between the Dromians and Frey. The Great War has been called many names: the Belgric War, the Durg War, the Elven Conflict, but by whatever name you call it, the war would change the Dromian and Frey races forever. After Fane Gika's death, Elan Rist of the Instaria tribe, the Frey's combat-focused tribe, became Fane, and for 5 long years the Frey and Dromians battled one another. Unfortunately for the Frey, the Dromians had both superior numbers and superior weapons, as they had learned how to forge iron from Trylos. On the 5th year of the war, the Dromians finally defeated the Frey at its Fane's namesake fortress, Elan Rist, killing the Frey Fane in the process. As that was the final roadblock between the Dromians and the Frey capital of Estremnadon, the Dromians began their march to their inevitable victory. As Fenelaus Mira of the Islwind tribe became the new Fane of the Frey, Trylos stepped back into the story. Trylos was still upset with the Dromians for how they had bartered with him during his release, and so to spite them, he taught Fenelaus how to use magic known as the Art. Fenelaus quickly mastered this power, and only 7 days after becoming Fane, Fenelaus marched toward the oncoming Dromian armies. The two met on the plains of Mador. Fenelaus fractured the ground and rose up a mountain, crushing the 10th and 12th Dromian legions, killing tens or perhaps even hundreds of thousands of Dromians. This marked the shift in the war. The Dromians began retreating, being helpless against the Frey Art. What once looked like an inevitable victory now looked like a quick defeat, and even worse, perhaps the extinction of the Dromian peoples. Turin would step in at this point and give the Dromians their first tool against the Art, the Orenfar. The Orenfar was a written script the Dromians could use to block the Art in a certain area. The Dromians would use this to create hiding holes called rolls, tiny meeting points underground lined with the Orenfar and therefore impervious to the Art. While the Orenfar did assist the Dromians, it only slowed the Frey advance. Fenelaus would continue marching, pushing King Midian and the Dromian army back to Neath. While Belgargarath was in Neath, there was still a high population of Dromians in the area, and so the Dromian army made a stand to allow their people to escape. King Midian and Andvari Berlin would use forbidden magic to allow King Midian to create a giant golem to battle Fenelaus. And while even the golem could not defeat Fenelaus, it did buy the Dromian civilians time to continue their retreat. The fray pushed the Dromians all the way back, past Lindenlot, and finally to Drumendor. It was there that Fane Fenelaus looked to end the war and make the Dromians extinct. The Aesira Turin would again step in. He would take Fenelaus back to Estremnadon and open the door to the Sacred Grove, showing her the dead husk of Illyria, teaching Fenelaus a lesson on the destructive nature of revenge and war, and imploring her to not make the same mistakes he had. This swayed Fenelaus, and she returned to Drumendor and offered a treaty with the Dromians. The Frey would spare the Dromians and give them the southwest section of the continent, though they did put severe limitations on the Dromians to discourage them from rising up again, leaving the Dromians weak, but also alive. King Midian would die, and once his daughter also died, without creating an heir, the bloodline of kings was broken. Due to the failure of King Midian and the rulership of the Brunden clan, the other three southern clans, the Bells, the Gricks, and the Lungs, overthrew them. The names of those three clans would merge together over time, forming the word Belglic-Lungrian. In time, this term would overtake Dromian in popularity, leading to the race being called the Belglic-Lungrians. The Belglic-Lungrians were now leaderless, with no Thane and no king. During the next several thousand years, the Belglic-Lungrians became more and more fractured. With no central leadership, each city and village would have its own mayor or council, leading to increased division and bickering. Trade would also suffer, as standards across the clans and cities would begin to differ. This increased hardship on the Belglic-Lungrians would also affect their lifespans, causing them to decrease to around 500 years during this time. The clans did continue in their heritage of craftsmanship though, and even held annual contests in Lindenlot to name the best tradesmen in several different endeavors such as building, digging, and forging weapons. Grand prize winners would be awarded with a golden torque, and it is one such winner that now enters the story. Rain was a lowly Belglic-Lungrian from the Nye clan, who became obsessed with digging, but not because of his love for the craft. Rain long had dreams where a female Belglic-Lungrian called to him, saying she was at the bottom of the world and needed him to find her. But no matter how deep Rain dug, it was never enough. Several years after winning the grand prize at the Lindenlot competition, Rain learned about two brothers who were planning to trespass into Neath. And knowing that Neath was one of the deepest places in Elan, Rain decided to join them. Rain and the Belglic-Lungrians Frost and Flood made their way deep into Neath. They managed to escape notice for quite some time, but even in those depths, Rain found it was not deep enough. Eventually, Balgargarath heard them. The trio managed to escape to the surface, but the damage was done. Balgargarath was no longer lost, and it seemed he was heading toward the surface. Once it became clear what had happened, the three Belglic-Lungrians were to be executed, and so they escaped north into the human lands. It was there that they met the humans and a magic-wielding Mirleith Frey named Arian, and her apprentice, a human named Suri. Knowing the kind of power Fenelaus had shown during the Great War, the trio believed Arian may be able to defeat Balgargarath and Neath, which in turn would exonerate them, staying their execution. So they came up with a plan. The humans were planning on going to war with the Frey, but did not have the weapons needed to do so. The trio told Arian and the humans that if they accompanied them to Neath and got rid of Balgargarath, the dwarves could help outfit the human army with weapons. They agreed, and a group of the three Belglic-Lungrians, Arian, Suri, and several humans, headed down to Carrick. Once they arrived, Frost, Flood, and Rain met with the mayor of Carrick, Gronbach Ike Prigmore. They made a deal that if they could defeat Balgargarath, the dwarves would provide the humans with 1,000 iron swords. The party ventured down into the depths of Neath, and the humans would indeed defeat Balgargarath, with the help of a magically created dragon. When they returned to the surface, Grönbäck reneged on his deal and started to arrest the entire party. But after stating that there was still a dragon in Neath, Grönbäck agreed to let the entire party go free, including Frost, Flood, and Rain, if they got rid of the dragon. Two of the humans watched as the dwarves forged a sword to deal with the dragon, in turn learning how to forge iron weapons themselves. Once the sword was created, the humans destroyed the dragon. Grönbäck once again reneged on his promise, but Suri, outraged at Grönbäck, used the art to create an earthquake, shattering the gates of Neath and forming a landslide. Grönbäck finally gave in and allowed the party to once again leave for the human lands. But the ancient Belgriclungrian city of Neath, now freed from Belgagarath, was once again inaccessible to the Belgriclungrians. Bryn, who was one of the humans in the party, was recording everything that had happened, and through her works being passed down through generations of humans, her negative portrayal of Grönbäck would forever stain the reputation of Belgriclungrians in the eyes of humans. Rain would choose to stay with the humans as they began their crusade against the Fray. After several years of war, a group of humans decided to go on a risky expedition to pass through the underworld, Pyre, in order to get to the Fray capital to save Suri, who had been captured and was being held prisoner. Rain decided to join them. The party would travel to Pyre, where Rain would finally find the woman who had been calling to him from his dreams. It was none other than King Midian's daughter, Beatrice. Beatrice told him that she had foreseen him uniting the Belgriclungrian peoples. She stated that one of her 6 visions that she had drawn on the walls of Drumendor involved a Belgriclungrian entering the underworld, retrieving her father's sword Lorillion, returning to the surface, and uniting the Belgriclungrian peoples. She gave Rain King Midian's sword, and revealed that before she had died, she actually had borne a child. She told Rain that when he returned to the surface, he should find her long-lost descendant, Amica, marry her, and unite his race, ushering in a silver age for the Belgriclungrians. Though it would take time, Rain would fulfill Beatrice's vision of uniting the Belgriclungrian people and becoming the first Lord of Drumendor. This happened shortly after the humans and Instaria defeated the Fray, creating the Novronian Empire. While Emperor Nephron seemed more disinterested in the Belgriclungrians, King Rain and Nephron employed a mutual truce, with the empire and kingdom enjoying mutually beneficial trade with one another. For 1,869 years, the Belgriclungrians would remain united in the Belgric kingdom. After the death of their current king in 1875, a dwarf named Lord Reinhardt was believed to become king. Unfortunately, Reinhardt would have a run-in with the granddaughter of the then Emperor Estermon II, Fairlane. Fairlane would humiliate Lord Reinhardt to such a degree that the Belgriclungrians would lose faith in his claim to the throne, once again throwing the Belgriclungrians into disarray. With no leader, the Belgriclungrian kingdom would become annexed into the Novronian Empire, becoming another one of the empire's provinces, and the Belgriclungrian people being granted citizenship. Some Belgriclungrians would take this opportunity to migrate to other parts of the empire. It would remain that way for around 250 years, at which point the Novronian Empire would collapse. This was also around the time that the term Belgriclungrian went out of favor, at least to the humans, and the term dwarf became more popular. The continent would split into 4 main nations of warlords, including Delgos. For a time, the Glenmorgans managed to unite the 4 nations, but after Glenmorgan III fell, the lands again fractured. This time, Delgos, which was still where the majority of Dwarven people lived, declared itself a republic. In all parts of the continent, the lives of dwarves were not easy. Many dwarves would eventually return to Delgos and to Tour del Four, as, while they were still treated as second-class citizens there, it was better treatment than they were receiving in other places such as Trent and Avon. Due to this prolonged hardship, the lifespan of dwarves again dwindled from the 500 years during King Reign to around 300 years. Around the year 3000, the Nephron Church was trying to unite the humans and dwarves under a single emperor once again. Due to the church's scheming, Drumendor and Tour del Four were lost to a goblin invasion. Around that same time, the Fray invaded the human lands. The humans were able to stop the invasion with the help of a dwarf named Magnus of the Darren clan. The humans, now united under a single empress, decided to build a new capital city, and with their new relationship with Magnus, employed dwarven assistants. This is as far as the story of the dwarves currently goes, but it hints at a better future for the Dromian people. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Be sure to subscribe and watch my other videos to learn more about the world of Elan and Rhaenyra. Thanks!